Today, I'm going to be walking you through the steps of how to make a continuous brew kombucha. You ready? Let's do this! If you don't have this book, I highly recommend it. It is the Big Book of Kombucha. Lost a bookmark. Anyways, this is by Hannah Crum and Alex Ligori. They put together this amazing reference book. It has everything that you ever need to know about kombucha history, kombucha brewing, kombucha flavoring, everything. So I got this when I first started thinking about brewing kombucha, and it has really been my go-to ever since. I use it to reference everything that I do kombucha related. So I would highly recommend picking this up. There is also lots of great guides on YouTube, throughout the internet. I found this to just have everything I need compiled in one place, which is so killer, because sometimes you get lost when you start diving into the interwebs. Okay, so the vessel that I'm gonna be brewing in today is 2.5 gallons, so the quantities I'm using will be based upon that amount. There's plenty of charts to find for different quantities that you might be brewing. I used to brew just single batch 1 gallons, so the quantities will change based upon the amount that you're brewing, but today we're doing 2.5 gallons. So what you wanna start with is 2 quarts of distilled water. You can use filtered water, just don't use tap water or anything that's gonna have chlorine in it. On occasion, when I was in a pinch and I didn't feel like going to the store to get the water, I would get tap water and I would boil it to get every impurity out, hopefully, I don't know. But that's what I did. Today we're using distilled water from the store to make sure that this batch is right on the money. Here we go. Okay, so let's start by putting the 8 cups of water into the pot. Mr. Pot, are you ready to receive the water?
Yes, I am.
All right, let's do this. All right, so now the water is just about boiling. We're gonna turn off that heat. We're gonna add 12 tea bags. All right, so voila. We got all the tea bags in there. You wanna let them brew for 10, 15 minutes now. Let them steep in there and do some tea brewing magic. What's that I hear? Oh yeah, time to take the tea bags out. Let's do it. All right, so for a 2.5 gallon brew, you want to use 2 cups of sugar, preferably organic cane sugar. Okay, so now you want to pour the sugar into the still hot water and you want to stir it around so it's completely dissolved. Okay, so now you got to let that cool down to about room temperature. Otherwise, you put it in there too hot, it's going to kill the SCOBY, and the SCOBY is what makes your kombucha change from sweet tea to pure magic. So we're going to let that chill out. It might take an hour or 2, depending on... It's a little warm in here. Yeah, it might take a while. In the meantime, we're gonna prep the vessel. We are going to get the starter fluid ready and check out the SCOBY. All right, so this is the super sweet vessel that we're using today. I just picked this up on Amazon. I'll link it in the description below. It came with a BPA-free plastic spigot, but I decided to go ahead and get the stainless steel spigot because the plastic one that I used to use on my old vessel tended to get clogged up pretty damn easily and never really had that good of a flow rate, and these are supposed to have a much better flow rate, so that's what I'm going to shoot for with this one. On the side here, you can see that I've already attached the liquid crystal thermometer. There's just a little adhesive strip on the back of there that you stick on. This is great to have so you can monitor the temperature of your kombucha. So ideally, you want to keep your kombucha between 75 to 85 degrees. So keeping an eye on the temperature reading on the thermometer is going to be really important, especially when you're first putting it in a location after you start your brew. Make sure it's not getting too hot or too cold. I keep mine over on the counter. I'll show you after we get it all set up. It seems to work fine. Usually gets a little bit warm in the summer, and I tend not to brew during the winter because it just gets too cold. The house stays too cold. There are heaters that you can buy for your vessel. You wrap around it, and they seem to work from what I've read, but I have not done that yet. So for me, kombucha brewing is just a non-winter event. Perhaps we will go for a walk after we brew kombucha! And now we are going to prep the vessel! So you want to fill it up with some hot water, swirl it around, make sure you get everything, there's no gunk in there. Check it out, dump it out. Then you want to drop about 1 cup of distilled white vinegar, kind of prep the vessel, get it ready for the kombucha that you're going to put inside of it. Let's do that now. All right, so now let's go ahead and pour the rest of the distilled water into the vessel. It's gonna be about 6 quarts, 24 cups. Let's do it. Vessel, are you ready to brew some delicious kombucha?
Yes, please.
All right, looks good. We're going to fill you with water, and then we're gonna put sweet tea in you. And then the SCOBY and the starter fluid. Get ready! We're gonna take the sweet tea from the stove. Should be nice and cool now. Let's check it actually. Sweet tea. Still a touch warm, but we're gonna put it with the cold water that we have in the vessel so that it should balance it out a little bit. Let's do that now. All right, now we got the tea and the water mixed together. Let's do a little finger dip, see how it feels. Feels fantastic. So you wanna make sure that it's not warm to the touch, because if it's warm to the touch, that means that it's probably over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and that would be a little bit too warm for the SCOBY to go into. Now, the time has come to say hello to our little friend, the SCOBY. What is a SCOBY? Okay, rather than me try and fuddle my way through a description of what a SCOBY is, I'm just gonna do a quick little read from Hannah Crumb's book, The Big Book of Kombucha, that'll kind of wrap it up a lot better than I could. The kombucha culture, which is the living material that drives the fermentation, is called a SCOBY, a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. It is a living contradiction, at once beautiful and ugly, hardy yet delicate, both mother and baby. It springs forth anew with each batch, a physical manifestation of a successful brew that also protects against contamination and prevents evaporation. Did you catch that? So basically, the SCOBYs are what make your tea and water combination turn into magic kombucha. And every time that you brew a batch of kombucha, you're gonna have a new SCOBY that'll be made. So it's kind of bizarre. I didn't really understand it until I started brewing, and you probably won't be able to wrap your head around it until you brew your own batch. But every time that you finish a batch, there's gonna be a new SCOBY that was born from the old SCOBY. It's bizarre. So what do you do with the old SCOBYs? I'd pick up the book and they'll give you a million ideas of what to do. I tend to keep mine, put them in a SCOBY hotel, which is just like a 1-gallon jar. Got one right here. This is my SCOBY hotel. When I was brewing a whole lot last summer, I had SCOBYs all the way up to here. Yeah, so there was tons of them. I had to get rid of them. I've got just 2 large ones left now, which is what you want to use for this size of a brew. 2 large SCOBYs. You can kind of see there's one like real fat one in there, and then there's a smaller one underneath it. So anyways, this is what you can keep them in, and then you can give them away to people, or you can set up multiple brews and you'll always have SCOBYs on hand. Now that we have the SCOBY in there, we're gonna drop the starter fluid on top. Starter fluid can be store-bought kombucha. I'm gonna use kombucha that was left over from my continuous brew from last summer. You're gonna wanna use 2 to 4 cups of starter fluid for a 2.5 gallon brew. So this is some of my starter fluid right here. Kind of see some of the goodies swimming around in there. It's been sitting in the fridge for a long time. I store it in the fridge in this kombucha jar that I got from a local kombucha brewery here in Denver, Happy Leaf Kombucha. So this is what I've stored my starter fluid in since last summer. Also a nifty thing to have, pH meter. Kombucha is anything that is 3.5 pH or lower. So as you're checking the progress of your brew, you can dip the pH meter into it and see where the levels are at. And once it's 3.5 or lower, you have kombucha. So let's go ahead and do a quick test of my starter fluid to see where it's at on the pH meter. .99. Woo-wee! Yeah, so this is super bitter. It basically tastes like vinegar at this point, but it's good to have a nice strong brew to put in there because it's really gonna kickstart your brew and get it going. So I'm cool with that. I wouldn't necessarily want to drink this. It is super bitter. I took a sip of it earlier and I should have recorded myself because it would have been pretty hilarious. But for starting a brew, this is super duper money. Okay, so let's go ahead and test the pH of the brew right now without having the SCOBY or the starter fluid inside of it. It should not be 3.5% or lower because that would mean it's already kombucha. Then what the heck are we doing here? All right, let's give it a shot. So it got up to 4.25. Definitely not kombucha. Okay, before you handle the SCOBY, make sure that you wash your hands very well because you don't want to be introducing any weird bacteria to it because that can screw it up big time. Whoa! That sucker. Drop you into your new home, buddy. So you see they kind of start to bind together. You can tear them apart. They don't need to be perfect circles or anything. I just don't want this one to be as thick as the one I just put in there. So we'll thin this guy out a little bit here. All right, that's looking pretty good. I'd say that's a beautiful, healthy SCOBY that is ready to be a part of this new community. Now, we're going to put the starter fluid on top. So at this point in the game, all you want to do is send some well wishes. Kombucha, I hope that you turn out to be the best brew that I've ever made. Do all of your fermenting magic in there, and I'll see you maybe 10 days. How about it? Okay, so now we're ready to cover it up. You want to use a clean cotton cloth. Something that's breathable, but it's going to keep the junk out, keep the pests out, keep any dust out. Cover it. I'm going to seal it with a rubber band. Then you just want to put it somewhere where it's not going to be disturbed. Let it sit anywhere from 7 to 28 days. Start checking it after 7 days. Drain a little bit out of the spigot. Give it a taste. Maybe test the pH. See where it's at. Once it's to your liking, go to town. From there, pick up the book and they'll tell you all the deets. But at that point, my friend, you have brewed your first batch of kombucha. Enjoy.